Chapter 6. Artisans and Industries in British Era. Reading Objectives. Causes of decline in handicrafts. Effects of deindustrialization. Emergence of modern Indian industries. British Act against Indian industries. Case study. The textile industry in India. The establishment of the British rule affected the existence of the handicrafts. India was not an industrial country in the true and modern sense of the term. But before the advent of the Europeans in India, India was the industrial workshop of the world. Three kinds of industry existed in India. 1. The rural cottage industry is weaving, carpentry, pottery etc. provide the day-to-day requirements of the agriculturists in the village. 2. The urban domestic industry turning out various products as textiles for the use of town folk and carried on by family members, possibly in a room in the house where the family lived and worked. 3. Small urban factory producing more sophisticated products as iron industry, engaging some hired laborers and generally carrying specialization further than in domestic industry. The urban industry of India, at the beginning of the 19th century, was mainly in the nature of handicrafts, producing fine textiles or other luxury products for the aristocracy. In handicrafts, Indian urban industry enjoyed a worldwide reputation. The urban industry occupied a very favorable and important position in India's economic activity. Enrich yourself. Muslin of Dhaka. Dhaka's fabric muslin is a cotton fabric of plain weave. It is made in a wide range of weights from delicate shears to coarse sheeting. It gets its name from the city of Mosul of Iraq, where it was first manufactured. Early muslin was hand-woven of uncommonly delicate hand-spun yarn, especially in the region around Dhaka, Bengal. It was imported into Europe for much of the 17th and early 18th centuries. Fine line muslin was formerly known as Sindan. In 2013, the traditional art of weaving Jamdani muslin in Bangladesh was included in the list of masterpieces of the oral and intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO. Decline in Indian handicrafts. Causes. The nation witnessed a number of uprisings from 1763 to 1857. These uprisings affected the country in many ways. The major causes of decline in handicrafts in India during the British rule were as follows. Adverse influence of the British rule on tastes and habits. The establishment of the British rule affected the existence of the handicrafts. With the virtual elimination of demand for the industry following the disappearance of noble codes, the industry wished a new source of demand from the European officials and tourists and from the Babus and Black Indian Sahibs. The European officials favored imported manufactures. The consumption habits of the newly educated Indians also dealt a crippling blow to these industries. Diminishing court and courtians. The main source of demand for the products of these handicrafts came from the royal courts and the urban aristocrats. With the abolition of the royal court, the main source of demand for the product of the handicrafts ceased to exist and handicraft began to decline. Karkhanas, which were set up in different parts of the country to provide the requirements of the royal court and the urban nobility, had to be closed down when the establishment of British rule in India dislodged the local rulers and their camp followers. Weakening of guilds. British also indirectly weakened the power of the guilds and other bodies which regulated trade and controlled the quality of materials used. As soon as the supervising bodies were removed, many evils such as adulteration of materials, poor workmanship etc. began to creep in, which led to a decline in value, artistic and commercial, of the wares. Do you know? Prohibition of use and possession of arms effectively destroyed to produce of arms, weapons and shields. Competition from machine-made goods. Competition from the European manufacturers was also partly responsible for the decline of Indian handicrafts. In the matter of quality, the Indian weaver could easily hold his own, but in the matter of price, he was hopelessly beaten by the machine-made goods. Indian middle class have great regard for everything foreign, created the condition worst. Thus, the process of decay which began with the establishment of foreign rule and foreign influence was completed by the competition from foreign goods. One-way free trade. The tariff pursued by the British government came to be known as one-way free trade. England pursued the policy of protection, to put her manufacturing industries on a sound footing at home through the imposition of import duties. India had free trade policy. Their policy was to make India subservient to the industries of Great Britain and to make the Indian producer grow raw material for the industries of England. Weak structure. Indian foreign trade was in the hands of foreigners. This meant that Indian artisans and producers were at the mercy of foreign merchants so far as sales or demand propagation in overseas markets were concerned. No effort was made to explore markets for products. Some people argue that the weaknesses in the industrial structure itself also be blamed for this decline of handicrafts. British policy of exploitation. The British merchants and their commission agents began to exercise illegitimate pressure on craftsmen for delivery of goods then on a priority basis at unduly low prices because the power of native rulers declined. Craftsmen were forced to sign agreements for delivery which, under more normal conditions, they could hardly be induced to. Due to exploitation, Indian craftsmen were forced to abandon their crafts in some cases or to flee to regions where more sympathetic policies are still pursued. Get to know more. Chicken curry, white on white. Believed to have been introduced by Noor Jahan, the wife of Mughal Emperor Jahangir, it is one of Lucknow's best-known textile decoration styles. There are references to Indian chicken work as early as 3rd century BC by Megasthenes, who mentioned the use of flowered muslin by Indians. Fact. State, true, or false. 1. The Indian craftsmen were not skilled at all. 2. Indian goods were of better quality than British goods. 3. Unemployment increased among the Indian craftsmen. 4. Industrial revolution had no impact over India. Effects of deindustrialization. Indian goods were famous all over the world. The British goods were nowhere in competition as had no goodwill quality. So the British government decreased their import by levying heavy duties on them. This had a negative impact on Indian economy and handicrafts. Because of colonial rule, India served as raw material source for the British and India had now a ready market for British goods. At that time, the Industrial Revolution had occurred in Britain. The factories employed hundreds of craftsmen from rural areas. Britain was being industrialized. In India, no such steps were taken for Indians' progress. In fact, the craftsmen skilled in various handicrafts still worked in traditional ways and the already suffering craftsmen were slowly facing unemployment and a bleak future. The unemployment increased day by day among the India craftsmen. They opted to plunder and loot the wealthy merchants to gain some money for fulfilling the very basic needs. This meant that it became difficult for law authorities to control dacoities, robberies and lawlessness. Emergence of modern Indian industries. The slow yet steady process of industrializing India took its first step in 1850 and 1860. Thus progress was maintained at a very deliberately slow process by the British, who wanted to rule over India as a source of raw material and wealth for the UK. The Industrial Revolution had left its impact all over the world. The introduction of mechanized goods and modern tools in certain handicrafts had taken India on its first steps to industrial development. Soon British industrial impact was clearly visible as far as British profits were concerned. The plantations were introduced as a simple yet major step towards industrialization. The cereal crops suffered a setback when the farmers switched over to commercial crops such as oilseeds, sugarcane, rubber, cinchona, jute, coffee, tea and most importantly indigo. Indigo dye utilized for coloring clothes was much in demand. Indigo was a vital crop as it brought in profits from plantations in Bengal and Bihar. Tea turned out to be another important plantation product from Assam, South India and Bengal. Many parts of South India were dotted by rubber, cinchona and coffee plantations. The British set up modern machines and thus began Indian industrialization. This introduction of mechanization in various crafts caused India to be a new entrant on the industrial scene. Along with most of the industries that were established, new industries also emerged. Industrialization in India caused emergence of cement, cotton, jute, iron, coal, steel and sugar industries. Jute industry. Bengal developed quickly as the center of the jute industry, but most of the jute mills were owned by British industries and traders. Iron and steel industry. Jamshedji Tata set up the Tata Iron and Steel Company, TISCO, in Jamshedpur. The slow progress of iron and steel industries quicked up later. Many more steel and iron factories dotted Mysore and Bengal. The development of iron and steel industries helped in the progress of engineering industries. Cotton textile industry. India's first cotton textile mill was set up in Bombay in 1853. Kawarji Nambe set up this mill. Later many other mills come up in Ahmedabad, Madras and Bombay itself. The capital was invested by the Indians only. Coal mining industry. Coal mining began on a large scale from mid-19th century. The coal mines in Orissa, Bengal and Bihar became major suppliers of coal for the railways industries as well as the iron ore industry that need coal for smelting iron in the process of producing steel. Searching dictionary. Industrialization. New methods of production to gain profits from a certain sector. Handicrafts, handmade artifacts etc. Other industries. 1930 was marked the introduction of the cement industry. Glass, matches and paper factories saw some growth and development too. India did not develop at a good speed as compared to other European. The British rulers had up barriers to stop Indian growth. British policies against Indian industries. The British wanted to control Indian industries and made policies which cater their requirement. The British did not do anything concrete towards rescuing the Indian handicrafts. As they followed free trade policy, they levied very low duty on the imported goods from Britain. This caused Indian goods to face a lot of competition from the factory-manufactured English goods. The British were owners of most of the industries in Britain, so the British were investing a lot of money to get as much raw materials as required. Thus the Indian industries were bereft of the wealth which was its due. On the other hand, Indian wealth was being sent out of India. Most of the wealth flowed from Indian factories to British coffers. This flow of money away from India was due to trade profits, raw material exports and importing furnished goods to India, selling them at high rates. Some small steps taken to industrialize India were slow, difficult and not uniform in progress. Some regions in India showed remarkable profits while others remained backward and not fully industrialized. Soon the economic impact on the Indian public was clear for all to see. The people were poverty-stricken and had the lowest income. Soon the gap between the rich and the poor widened. The farmers, craftspeople and laborers worked and lived in poverty-stricken conditions in India. The farmers were oppressed by high revenue taxes and land-grabbing techniques or policies. Many craftsmen became jobless as they could not compete with factory workers or foreign machine-manufactured products. To get rid of poverty, some became workers in British-owned factories. The factory workers were forced to work for very long hours in very unhygienic conditions. This ill treatment under the British made Indians revolt. Soon cries emerged all over India to banish the British from the Indian soil. Case study: Industrial Revolution and Indian textile. During the Industrial Revolution, new machines such as spinning wheels and hand looms came into the picture. Making clothing material quickly became an organized industry as compared to the domesticated activity it had been associated with before. In the Industrial Revolution era, a lot of efforts were made to increase the speed of the production through inventions such as the flying shuttle in 1733, and the roller spinning machine by John Vialt and Louis Paul in 1738. The Indian textile industry was revived only when the Indians revolted against the British and the Swadeshi movement begun by Gandhiji. Swadeshi movement encouraged people to weave and wear their own khadi garments. India retained its position as world's second highest cotton producer. China has come to dominate the global textile industry. Today, modern techniques, electronics and innovation have led to a competitive, low-priced textile industry offering almost any type of cloth or design a person could desire. Word to know: India was the industrial workshop of the world. In handicrafts, Indian urban industry had reached a high level of excellence. Dhaka's fabric muslin is a cotton fabric of plain weave, made in a wide range of weight from delicate shears to coarse sheeting. British indirectly weakened the power of the guilds and other bodies which regulated trade and controlled the quality of materials used. Indian goods were famous all over the world. The British goods were nowhere in competition as had no goodwill and quality. Jamshedji Tata set up the Tata Iron and Steel Company, TISCO, in Jamshedpur. In 1813, the British Parliament issued the Charter Act that put an end to monopoly on trade by the English East India Company. The British free trade policy caused Indian goods to face a lot of competition from the factory manufactured English goods.